Willkommen in unserem heutigen Online-Talk. Heute sprechen wir mit dem Künstler Warren Neidich, dem amerikanischen Künstler. Und ja, es geht so langsam los. Ich sehe, die ersten schalten sich hinzu. Wir machen den kleinen Weg durch die Galerie. Unsere Ausstellung On Equal Terms 2. Hier ist die Arbeit von der Charlotte Tribus, über die wir schon gesprochen haben. Und hier ist Katja. Katja hatte gestern Geburtstag. An dieser Stelle nochmal ganz herzlichen Glückwunsch nachträglich. Wollen wir vielleicht vorne ans Fenster gehen? Dann zeige ich noch die Arbeit von Warren. Er ist noch nicht dabei.
Ist er schon berufen?
Ja, er müsste ja eigentlich von sich aus sich das zuschalten.
Ich könnte aber auch schon mal eine kleine Vorstellung von Warren Neidich machen.
Genau, das wäre schön.
Yeah. Warren Neidich is, okay, we switched to English, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today is one of our English days. So, Warren Neidich is an author, art theoretician, and interdisciplinary post-conceptual artist based in Berlin and New York. He studied photography.
So, jetzt sind wir, glaube ich, wieder online, ja.
He taught at the Weißensee Kunsthochschule in Berlin and at the Otis College of Art and Design in LA, among others. He works with photography, video performances, among them also noise performances, installations, sculpture. He works a lot with neon and combined neon pieces, but also his talks and lectures are important, as well as multidisciplinary symposiums. So he's very, very active and publishes a lot. He founded the Summer Institute of Art, and he publishes a journal of neuroaesthetics and internet platform artbrain.org. So very active, and in his artistic research and the neuroaesthetic research, he focuses on how the digital development changes our habits, our minds, and our ways of perception. Hi, Warren.
Hey, can you see me?
I can see you and hear you, yeah. And
sorry, we're not allowed to go to the barber. So I haven't been able. We are not allowed to go to here in the United States. We're not allowed to go to the barber. So I haven't been.
Oh, you look great. Don't worry, you look great. I like your head, the yellow.
Oh yeah.
Color.
Well,
you look great.
That's to cover. That's to cover a mess.
Well, we're so authentic in this format, so this is really enhances the impact.
All right. Well,
we're totally not. We have no makeup like you see. Huh? So we are natural. We wake up like this.
Warren,
yes.
Katja is at the moment, she's doing a little introduction about you. We let her continue and then we come back to you, huh? Okay?
Sure.
But stay there, don't move, don't
I'm not
go
moving.
away.
I even have the phone plugged in.
Yeah. Well, basically, I said all the important things already. Warren examines the impact of the digital development on our brain, basically, on our ways of perception, our habits, our minds, and he analyzes how social media and all these impacts through the extremely visual age that we live in change our brains, and one of the key words is neuroplasticity, so the plasticity of our brain. And we are, what we have in this show, On Equal Terms 2, is two pieces. This is wonderful neon work outside the gallery. It's like a signal, and you can see it from far away. Sometimes we call it our pharmacy signal, because we offer art as medicine in these times. You see it's blinking. There's one part going on and off, and it's called Equal, Not Equal. So the topic of our show is this the title On Equal Terms. sometimes it's not so equal. It gets harder and harder to distinguish between the true and the false, the right and the wrong, or the real and the virtual. So our former polarized thinking is not working anymore in these times, and we have to find new ways of thinking and new perspectives. And this is one of the works that have a very simple form, but very well symbolic in these times. It's blinking quickly, and it's almost at the same time one thing and the opposite. So we're very proud to present this work.
Warren?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So
what are you going to ask me questions, or what do you want me to do?
Yeah, maybe you can say a word to the sculpture that I just showed, the neon piece. Okay. So let's jump into the water. Why are you working so often with neon recently? That brings us also to other works.
Well, it's funny because all of prior to, I would say, prior to my exhibition at the Museum Cartier in Vienna, which was about 3.5 years ago, many of my works were drawings and wall drawings that I made with different kinds of materials. And at that moment, basically those drawings were mind maps in which I was investigating, or I was investigating many of the things you just mentioned, things like activist neuroaesthetics. I think it's very important for people to understand that I'm not doing neuroaesthetics, I'm doing activist neuroaesthetics, and that I've been doing activist neuroaesthetics for 25 years, with the beginning of my website, artbrain.org, and the Journal of Neuroaesthetics, which I started in 1997 in New York, after a series of lectures at the School of Visual Arts about activist neuroaesthetics. Having said that, I also was very interested in, again, you mentioned neuroplasticity, which is the capacity of the material brain to be able to be transformed by the environment. That environment today, more and more, is new technology. Now, when I say brain, and this is very important because it's going to have something to do with that sculpture that is beautifully situated in the front of the gallery. And that is that the brain is not simply that which the material brain, or that brain which exists inside the cranium or the bony skull, but is situated as well in the external brain, which is the environment, which has its own evolution, its own social evolution, political evolution, economic evolution, and that the two, the intracranial brain and extracranial brain, are co-evolving together. They're co-evolving together. They are one. Now, sometimes the intracranial brain is changing rapidly, and sometimes the extracranial brain is changing more rapidly. But overall, over long periods of time, they are changing and co-evolving together. And we see this if we look at the history of man 2 million years ago, and the evolution of the brain as a result of changes that took place with the invention of fire, the invention of spears, biface spears, the creation of those spears. We see in the history of man from 2 million years ago, co-evolution of new structures in the brain, the parietal cortex, some parts of the temporal cortex especially, and also the frontal cortex. Okay, having said that, all of the work that I've been doing takes off from that base, and creates different forms of superstructure. And if you look, and so that, going back to that special exhibition that I made in Vienna, I transformed the work, which had previously been wall works, into neon. And part of why that was that I was living between LA and Berlin, and I realized how in the marketplace of ideas, the neon had played such an essential role. And
Warren, the sound is very, very hard. Can you go a little bit away from the phone? Yeah, it's better. Oh, yeah. Now we see you. Okay, that's better. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm an internet immigrant, as you can see. I still think a phone is something that you're talking to. It's still part of my brain. But anyway, as I was saying,
look at us.
But I think in a way, that was kind of very surreal. Just seeing my mouth probably opening and closing, my teeth, the beard, very surreal. You know, which was in a way a very basic historical base for me as well. But anyway, I was living in LA, driving down Sunset Strip, totally captivated by the various forms of neon, the way that it was used in the as an economic tool, and how it operated in the economic system. And I wanted to understand it as a possibility for operating within not only the marketplace of things, but the marketplace of ideas. And of course, the relationship to pop with Bruce Nauman, and the relationship to conceptual art in the work of Joseph Kosuth played a large role in that. I think that Kosuth, in a very, very different way, was using neon to talk about ideas, but in a very different way, because for me, the power of his work is that he is translating philosophy, especially that which has to do with phenomenology, into artworks, text works, whereas I am attempting, in my own modest way, to produce a whole new theoretical framework so that my art is an example of my theory, which I am creating anew from different kinds of vocabularies. The piece in the front of the gallery was originally shown at Lax Art in Los Angeles and was curated by Lori Furstenberg, who incidentally curated my show, was one of the curators of my show in Venice, and in which we put another form of equal, not equal, in front of the of the space, the Zwecka project space where I was showing, and we put it above the door, and we wanted everyone who entered that door and who enters your gallery to think about what equality and non-equality means. So this work, on one hand, is if you look under Google at this unequal sign, you understand it as a symbol in analytic philosophy, and they actually use the non-equal sign.
We are showing the picture from Venice now. Please.
Oh yeah, that's Venice. Yeah, that's a piece in Venice.
Yeah.
And it's actually a philosophical symbol. However, in this case, it's really about inviting people to ask themselves, is our world equal and not equal? Does everybody have the same rights? Does everyone have equal access? And we see this today in the coronavirus, especially in the United States, the way that we live in a contested field. It's a contested field in which there are people who are lucky enough to be able to go to a cabin in the woods like myself, and I understand that, and those who are situated in much different kinds of abodes and who don't have the kind of access to medical care. So it's very relevant to today, I think, as well.
We're just showing, while you're talking, some more images of your show of last year during the Venice Biennial at the Zwecka space in Venice, where the large Pizzagate neon piece was shown, and outside the equal, not equal version. Just to.
Do you have a picture of the sculpture?
The not equal, not equal.
The Pizzagate sculpture.
Yeah, I do. Oops.
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah. It's very, I mean, we showed this sculpture at PRISKA's Gallery PRISKA PASQUER as well, and it was gorgeous in that context. It looked fantastic in the space, and we had to make adjustments in the biennial because this space was a space in which you could not put a nail into the wall. So we had to figure out new methodologies for hanging the sculpture. And the volume was much larger in this space. So the placement of the piece and how it operated in different ways. Plus, whereas PRISKA's gallery is this incredible modernist architecture, this architecture was very historic. It was a piazza from former times, and this relationship of this cloud to that space was a very, very different kind of relationship. We also included a mirror in that piece in Venice, which reflected.
So here you can see it in our gallery space. Here's
beautiful, beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here in the gallery space, it was a kind of central node to the two other spaces. So this was the bottom, this was the floor space, or the first floor, and it connected, even though it obviously it's a text-based work based on language, and it also, in a kind of virtual way, connected the downstairs space, in which we were showing a video, and the upstairs space where we were showing paintings, and it acted as a kind of it kind of embraced and connected the three spaces all together. Yes.
Ron, I would like to speak with you as well about the piece in Düsseldorf.
Oh, okay.
So if we have pictures we have prepared here.
Well, this is very important, right? This is the techno. This is one of those. This is the incredible change that the techno-industrial complex is going through right now. So here in this piece that I'm showing in Düsseldorf, we are in the midst, as I mentioned, of a very, very different kind of technological psychic evolution. And we call that now, I'm calling that, amongst other people, is cognitive capitalism. Now, some people would say that cognitive capitalism is somehow related to post-Fordism. And yes, there is a lot of relationship. But post-Fordism is subsumed by cognitive capitalism because mental labor becomes the essential component and the de-eroticized body of the cognitariat is becoming the central focus of the new economy. So here we are back in Düsseldorf, and what I'm trying to talk about now in a number of works is the relationship of the phantom or the specter of these past economies and the way that they look at the object through a kind of engagement with dialectic or historical materialism. I'm sure everyone knows what that is. Maybe I can go into that later. But the idea that as an object moves through history, it gathers upon itself veneers, so to speak. Like if you can think about clear veneers that change the object, change the meaning of the object, because of the effect of these different cultural milieus as you move through history, the effect on the object.
But the opening of this show in Düsseldorf at the Kaistraße at the Arthena Foundation was in the beginning of March, and it was actually the last public opening of an exhibition that we attended, PRISKA, and maybe you as well. It was shortly before you flew off to New York, before everything shut down. So we don't know when we can experience such a collective viewing again.
Yeah.
So there are not many people who can go there and see the show, depending on how long it will go on, maybe. But maybe we can talk a bit literally about this piece. It's a combined installation with found neon elements and kind of body parts or artificial body parts and mirrors, and it's about the show is called Something Between Us, and it's about the relationship of human beings with each other and with artificial intelligence. So this is a very complex topic and very complex piece that you did, and it's brilliant. And we see sausages and flashes and words. So maybe you can just go a bit into it.
Well, that was why I was trying to give a little bit of background. And you have in this piece, as you were correctly describing, and I would like to say that it relates to the work in Venice. It's a three-dimensional sculpture diagram that goes from the wall into the sculptural space. And as you rightly said, it's made up of a number of components. If you could show the bottom of the sculpture first, you see that there are my arms, which I cast, and then at the end of this arm, there is a clear plastic hand. And then on the other side is another arm. We show the other arm or not? Okay, well, it doesn't matter. The other arm, yeah, that's right. You see the edge of it here. The other arm is also a cast of my arm without the hand, and a strange plastic, clear plastic hand that now is on the shoulder. So this is the base of the sculpture. This is what's generating the energy from a metaphoric, allegorical point of view. This, yeah, there it is, right there. You have a hand, that red glob there. In case you don't know, if you were at the exhibition, you would see that there are 4 fingers and a missing thumb. This is the basis of the sculpture, and what it is it's a phantom limb. It's a phantom limb. It's 2 arms, the right and left arm. The body is missing. The body is something that you can only imagine and that you become aware of. And on both sides of this missing body, this invisible man, this invisible body, is these 2 arms, and they are both missing their hands.
Yeah,
now,
but the arms come with the shoulders, so you can imagine them like rotate in the armpits and act or move.
Exactly. But the important for me, that's right on. The importance for me is that these hands are called remapping. The phantom limb, many people have 2 different effects from the phantom limb, which is what happens to a certain degree of people who have an amputation caused by an accident, like being in a car crash, or actually a surgically removed arm. Let's not get to there yet. Let's stay with the sculpture on the bottom. Okay? Let's stay with the sculpture on the bottom, because this is the essential component of the whole sculpture that everything else is generated from. So this phantom limb, this limb, what you're seeing here as far as the hand, the contorted plastic clear hand on the left arm and the right, is a phenomena called remapping. So some people, after they have this amputation, the phantom of the missing arm or hand becomes redeposited on another part of the body. Now that kind of remapping, it's called remapping, and one can think about it from the point of view of, you can think of remapping in many ways. You could think of it as cultural remapping, the way immigration, that people from other countries remap their cultural heritages in the country that they find themselves in. You could think of that as remapping as borders. You can go back to situationism and think of remapping of the détournement, the dérive, psychogeography, how these things operate as a kind of remapping. But so this becomes a kind of generalized conceptual framework to look at a lot of different phenomena. Now, then what happens is you go up in the sculpture, you see a lot of neons. Now, these neons are found neons. That's important to know. These are neons that were originally in signs that people, especially collectors, are taking the neon out of the words that they illuminate and putting them in instead with LEDs. And when they do this, they are no longer using the neon. So I have been collecting these throwaway neons, and very much reading at this time about Art Povera, and the Art Povera were also very involved in neon, but the neon, it has a very different way of it has a lot to do with phenomenology and minimalism and a kind of European experience, a post-minimalist European experience, and so I'm recycling these ideas as phantoms and using the methodologies of an art historical process, which is Art Povera, utilizing these found objects, these things that are throwaways, these things that don't have any value to someone, and reapproximating them within this sculpture. Then I'm adding important words. And these words are things like, as you see, surplus jouissance, accumulation, words like neurocapitalism. I'm going to go back and explain that after I go through the rest of the sculpture. So on the bottom, you have the base as this phantom limb remapping. Then you have a combination of words and found neon sculptures that are both, that create this kind of abstract space or cloud of the sculpture. And then finally, you have this phantom. These found on eBay. I bought these hands, these prosthetic hands and shoulders from the internet, remove the shoulder and just have the hand. And it's funny because this hand has a lot to do with the phantoms of the history of the war and people who left, who unfortunately lost their limbs. And these are prostheses from the 1950s, and they were found in Germany. So they do link back to the war and the loss of limbs because of the catastrophe of the war. And then I also put a mirror in, and which the hand is reflecting. And there are 4 mirrors, and what they do is they give a kind of container, an invisible container. It's when you're in the space, you really feel this. You can't see this in the images, but when you're there, you realize that these are only 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter mirrors, or they're made out of the mirror that it's not even a real mirror, it's a plastic mirror, and that gives a distorted view and reflects the sculpture from these 4 perspectives, but gives this incredible, along with the columns, gives this incredible an incredible feeling of a space that is.
It's also pointing to the 4 directions of the compass. It's like north and south and east and west,
right?
Like pointing everywhere a bit.
Exactly. And what's interesting about these hands is when I put one of these up on Facebook, just the hand with the mirror reflection, I realized how relevant it is to the coronavirus, because if you just look at the hand and its reflection, it's about this fact of the decorporalization and the de-eroticization of the body in this new post-pandemic, or this pandemic moment, when we can no longer really touch each other. When we, in the past, and this has a lot to do, this de-eroticization has a lot to do with this transition that I'm talking about, which I'm going to go into in 1 second, but it's important to understand that we are in this moment of de-eroticization where touching another human being, shaking their hands, being close, instead of being pleasurable, is striking fear in our hearts, and is instead of being a kind of connection to love and eroticism, is a connection to death. So that is an important element now plays into the sculpture's conceptual framework. But to continue, one more thing I want to end and finish with my discussion of it is, what are the words about? What are the words about? And what the words are about is that this method of de-eroticization, this method is related to something that I'm not calling, but that Franco Berardi is calling, which is very important for this sculpture, which is the loss of. Hold on, I'm looking. I'm just spacing out here. Hold on for 1 second. I'm just looking for. I always forget what this word is, and it's really weird. It's called, he uses the word dissolidarity. So we have this idea.
Can you repeat it? What is the word?
Yeah. You know what solidarity is? Like comradeship.
Okay. Yeah.
This is dissolidarity. We are in the moment in which here we are, instead of me being in the gallery and embracing an audience who I would be talking directly with, I'm talking, from a cabin in the United States that's somehow the internet. I'm moving through these vast connections of the internet to find myself in your gallery speaking to you. This is about the fact of of another example of the dissolidarity, the de-eroticization of our moment, in which, as I mentioned, the body, instead of being a place of pleasure, has become a place of fear. And so this work starts in the bottom with the word. And I think now that I mention these words, everyone is going to, from what I've been talking about, everyone's going to understand the sculpture very easily, as it was with the fundamental background I gave you, because it starts with the word phantom. And then are you back on the sculpture at Düsseldorf?
Yes.
Okay. So, we start with this this idea of the phantom. As I mentioned, the base of the sculpture, right? The base of the sculpture is consisting of these arms and these arms and the phantoms that they have, and that these are generating this energy, this remapping of the brain onto the body is creating an energy that affects a remapping of various conceptual frameworks and creating a different kind of history of them. So this is really talking about what can we create an artificial intelligence based on a de-optimized phantomology. In the way that artificial intelligence operates, and by the way, the history of artificial intelligence starts with artificial neural networks. And many of the thesis and the way that we understand artificial networks and artificial networks relate to how we understand artificial intelligence. The way that patterns that exist within the environment sculpt, in this case, electronic circuitry to create an artificial intelligence that can operate on the environment is somehow comparable to the way that this environment and the patterns that exist within our environment, the cultural, political, social, economic habitus, milieu, sculpts the neuroplasticity of the brain. So there's a connection between the two. And as this new world that we're living in sculpts the neuroplasticity of the brain, it creates new opportunities for thought and new concepts of the way, the complexity of thought. So here we have an ontogenesis of thought, starting with ideas that, what I'm arguing is that in this creation of this new form of intelligence, we are moving through the de-eroticized body into a kind of neural capitalism, that instead of the thoughts and our ability to concentrate on our fantasies, we are constantly working. The cognitariat creates his identity not through his erotic psychic fantasies, which would be understood through Freudian psychoanalytic paradigms, through talk therapy, through the analysis of dream work, but instead is being captured by labor, and this new form of labor, in which the new forms of labor become more important than the psychic aspects of subjects, and that subjects are no longer being constructed. In this theory, this is all theory, this is my theory. There are many people who have different ideas about these things, and I respect them, but this is my theory. My theory, basically, and the theory here, is that that neural capitalism, which is trying to privatize the sensory system and privatize the brain, and I'll give you an example, a perfect example of this in 1 second, is also part of a regime, a political, social, economic regime, which attempts to decarnalize, that attempts to disrupt different forms of solidarity, and produces another kind of human, and that is called the cognitariat. And so this is a kind of theory of the cognitariat's new psyche, as it moves from, and which is generated from this phantom, and it tries to disrupt this new tautology of artificial intelligence generated from an optimized artificial intelligence, optimized by specific sculpted patterns that that governmentalization. If you think about governmentalization, which means how the government governs and how it makes a people, it generates a people with homogeneous thinking. There, in that word is mental, governmental.
Let's get back. I would like to come back to the power of art, because that's also one of your important words.
But I think this is important.
What can we do?
Hold on. I think that fascism, no, I think it's very important to talk about the fact that we are entering a new phase of fascism right now. And that is, we are all sequestered in our homes. And this new technology that is de-eroticized and destabilized solidarity is now has taken hold in a way that it never has. For instance, Zoom, the company Zoom, the profits of Zoom have increased 150% during this crisis. Different home delivery of food, things that were part of the generalized economy are now taking over the economy. And also, the use, I just want to say one more thing, and the use of the internet and iPhones in China to track people. Yes, it's necessary, and I'm not saying it's not necessary. Or the use of drones in France to track people. All of these new technologies being used by regimes to secure the human being. And what I call this is, I call this the disciplinary society 2.0. So the disciplinary society of Foucault, which was used originally to quarantine people, which was then based on this by the Tower and the penitentiary as outlined by Bentham, and then used as a model for understanding the way that schools, hospitals were being organized and distributed to control people's movements and understanding, and then moved to the society of control of Deleuze, in which he said those walls were no longer even there in the age of the incoming internet, and now we use passwords and cards, credit cards and things like that, and that's the way we're being controlled, to now the statisticon, what's called surveillance capitalism, where everything that we're doing, shopping, making, thinking, whatever, is now being recorded and is being created into data, which has been used against us, is now being used in a new form of totalitarianism, which I call the disciplinary society 2.0, which is the sequestering of the individual in our homes right now during the coronavirus. The question is, will it go away after the coronavirus? This is my question.
I wanted to ask you, how can you work? How can you plan projects? How can you plan to go on working in the situation where you are right now? You are in New York. Can you just describe your perspectives, work-wise?
Does that show you anything?
Oh, that looks good. Green.
Yeah.
Happy.
It's very difficult to work, to be honest with you. A lot of things have been canceled. My school has been already canceled. I was going to be in the Sonspeak Quadriennial in Arnhem, which was this incredible biennial curated by Bonaventure. And that's been canceled. We were going to do this incredible project there. That was canceled. I don't know when it's happening again. As you know, the next leg of my exhibition in Düsseldorf, which was going to be in Nuremberg, has been canceled. You know, it's very, very difficult. Also, I don't have my library here. I depend on my library. I have, as you know, because you've been to my place, my studio in Berlin, I have a beautiful library. But that's an incredible resource of information for me. I'm having to write now. I'm writing an essay right now, and very, very difficult, very difficult. But anyway, yeah, it's hard. Very difficult.
Maybe you said that you are working on a new work about the coronavirus.
Yeah.
But I would say that maybe we speak about this next time, because
okay.
I think it's, we had a lot of visitors, we had a lot of people that were looking here.
Oh, good.
Listening to this, and I think it's really worthwhile to repeat it and to speak about the other subjects.
Okay.
Or other subjects. Maybe we have an appointment next week? Yeah.
Sure.